The following program, The Russ Belville Show, is intended for responsible adults only. We advocate to the repeal of marijuana prohibition for adults. We discuss the science, culture, and controversy about America's marijuana laws. We do not advocate any illegal activity and encourage all listeners to learn their state and federal marijuana laws. Opinions and claims made by guests and advertisers on The Russ Belville Show are their own, and The Russ Belville Show cannot be held legally responsible for their validity or reliability. Viewer discretion is advised.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth. Hey! Spanning the continent to bring you the truth about cannabis and marijuana law reform.
I smoke pot and I like it a lot.
From the promise of legalization.
I think that we think it can criminalize our marijuana laws.
To the agony of prohibition.
One major responsibility is to encourage people to use less drugs.
The Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.
Yeah, I hear you had a question for me.
Now, here's your host, Radical Russ Belville.
Good day, Chokers and Tokats, and welcome. We made it to the middle of the week. It is Wednesday, February 27th, 2013, and it's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. Thanks for joining us here on the Russ Belville Show. We got all sorts of new stuff coming at you, as well as new advertising, so listen to some of that, and all sorts of great stuff for today's show. Unfortunately, I have to open up the show with one piece of bad news, and that is that Dr. Mitch Earlywine will not be joining us today. Yes, I'm sorry. I'm terribly sorry. But there's a really good reason why. He's at the University of Central Florida today in Orlando, speaking to that fantastic normal UCF group. I've been down there. I've spoken to them before. They are a great group of young adults working to end marijuana prohibition. So he's going to be imparting his wisdom and answering questions there live for the UCF kids today. So he can't be with us today. But I do have something for you. We have got some video turned in by Mike Smolka. He was our volunteer at the High Times Medical Cannabis Cup in Los Angeles. Glendale. San Bernardino. And he had kept the Fink Cam is what we call it. He kept Fink Cam. I forgot to get it from him. So he had to mail it back to me. I got it today. So we got some new video, new audio. We've got Tommy Chong's acceptance speech at the High Times Medical Cannabis Cup, where he accepted for his Lifetime Achievement Award. We'll play that for you in place of where we'd have Dr. Mitch today at 1:30. We've also got a radical rant today. My one non-pot smoking friend, Kevin Sabet, is in the news again today, and you may have remembered that, yes, I know. You may remember that I had pointed out he was going to be in Ohio yesterday, and he was. There's a headline from that, so we're going to get into that in the rant, and a couple of other doctors who just can't seem to get through their thick skulls that plants can be medical. So we're going to take a look at that in the Radical Rant today. Also on today's show, we're going to go behind the headlines. There's some terrible news coming out of Colorado where a 5 nanogram per se DUID bill has made it out of a House committee. We're going to take a look at the politics behind per se DUID and what, if any, options we have to try to defeat this wave of DUID bills that are coming out. Also, we got our 420 radio news headlines coming up, and today is Irie Wednesday for our daily Toker tunes. Brian the Red is going to bring you some music from Culchafari, some Jaw Soldiers, coming up at 20 past the hour. Also, we have got our Toker Talk Radio coming up in hour 2, taking your calls at 971-533-7111. Thanks for joining us. It's the Russ Belville Show.
You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.
The law offices of Omar Figueroa would like to remind you to stand up for your rights. Please do not give up your precious liberties. There's nothing wrong with standing up for our constitutional rights, and in fact, it's the only way to honor the Constitution that recognizes our natural rights. Treat law enforcement with respect and respect the Constitution by standing up for your rights. If you are detained or arrested, stand up for your rights by repeating, I respectfully invoke all my legal and constitutional rights. I do not consent to any search and seizure. I want to remain silent, and I want to speak to my attorney, Omar Figueroa. Omar Figueroa has more than a decade of experience in federal and California courts and graduated from Yale University, Stanford Law School, and Trial Lawyers College. Please contact the law offices of Omar Figueroa at 415-489-0420 or 707-829-0215 or on the web at www.omarfigueroa.com.
Now it's time for your 420 Radio News for Wednesday, February 27th, 2013. I'm Russ Belville. Attorney General Eric Holder says feds to set pot legalization response relatively soon. This from Politico.com. The federal government is nearly ready to announce how its law enforcement personnel and prosecutors will respond to the decision Colorado and Washington voters made in November to legalize marijuana use in their states, Attorney General Eric Holder said Tuesday. Quote, we're still in the process of reviewing both of the initiatives that passed, Holder said at a morning appearance, answering a question from Colorado Attorney General John Suthers. Quote, I would say, and I mean this, that you'll hear soon, end quote. Federal law treats marijuana as a Schedule I controlled substance like heroin and LSD. However, as pot has been legalized for medicinal use in 18 states in recent years, federal prosecutors have had to confront the awkwardness of prosecuting individuals for actions that are legal under state law. That predicament became even more intense after the passage of broad decriminalization measures in Colorado and Washington state last fall. Marijuana DUI bill passes Colorado House Committee. This from HuffingtonPost.com. A bill that would set a legal limit for the amount of THC allowed in a motorist's bloodstream has cleared its first hurdle and passed unanimously in the Colorado House Judiciary Committee Tuesday night. Under House Bill 1114, drivers caught with 5 nanograms of THC, the psychoactive ingredient in marijuana that produces the high sensation, in their blood would be considered to be driving under the influence of marijuana and could be ticketed similarly to a person who has considered to be too drunk to drive. As in previous years when marijuana DUI bills have come up for debate, opponents say that the 5 nanogram standard is too low for frequent pot smokers, especially medical marijuana patients who regularly have this level of THC in their bloodstream, and therefore, if passed, these people would lose their driving privileges, the Denver Post reports. But Representative Waller says that this bill is different than the previous bills because it allows for a person who has been charged with having 5 nanograms of THC in their blood to rebut the charge that they were too impaired to drive, according to 7 News. Quote, for example, if you did not exhibit poor driving, you can put that on as evidence to say, look, my driving was not poor, I'm not unsafe to operate a motor vehicle, end quote, Waller said during a hearing. Marijuana poll, Californians' support for legalizing pot at record levels. This from the LA Daily News. Californians support for legalizing pot in greater numbers than ever, and they want the federal government to cool it with the crackdowns on medical marijuana dispensaries. In a field poll released Wednesday, California voters, by a margin of 54% to 43%, supported allowing legal sales of marijuana, as long as restrictions are in place on age, driving under the influence of the drug, and licensing those who sell it. That represents the highest level of support since the field poll began asking the question 44 years ago, when most Californians believed pot was the gateway drug to more harmful substances. 2/3 of the 834 registered voters said they opposed the Obama administration's raids on medical marijuana outlets, in which nearly 200 dispensaries, mostly in California, were targeted in President Barack Obama's first term. Nearly 3/4, 72%, of Californians back the state's existing medical marijuana law, approved by voters in 1996. And a strong majority, 58%, would support allowing medical marijuana dispensaries in their own communities. Matthew Riddle again tests positive for marijuana and is cut from the UFC. This from MMAJunkie.com. Matthew Riddle, an 8-3 fighter in the UFC, was off his timetable to cease using marijuana usage prior to a fight. The welterweight fighter on Tuesday confirmed to MMA Junkie that he failed his second post-fight drug test for marijuana and has been released from the UFC. Several critics, including UFC President Dana White, said Riddle should have won a unanimous decision in his last fight on Fuel TV 7, where he earned a split call against Che Mills. Riddle exits the promotion as one of the only active fighters to serve his entire professional career in the UFC. Fifth grader brings marijuana to school from WAVY.com, Suffolk, Virginia. A fifth grader who brought marijuana to his school in an apparent effort to stop his dad from smoking could be expelled from school. According to Diana Klink with the city of Suffolk, an officer responded to Driver Elementary for a student in possession of marijuana. The student told officers he found the marijuana in his dad's truck and took it to school with him to show his teacher. He wanted his dad to stop using it. The Suffolk Public Schools said the student was recommended for expulsion per policy and will have a hearing in 10 days. And that's your 420 Radio News for Wednesday, February 27th, 2013. I'm Russ Belville. When we come back, we go behind the headlines and take a look at that Colorado bill for the 5 nanogram per se DUID and the political ramifications. We'll be right back. .org is listener-supported cannabis community radio, and while we value every $4.20 donation that comes in monthly from our members, we take this moment to offer an extra special thanks to our most generous donors who have provided over $1,000 worth of support to 420radio.org. For their privacy's sake, we'll identify these knights and dames of the smoky table as Sir Randy of the Lakes, Dame Kathleen the Beneficent, Dame Kaylee the Wise, Sir Travis of Stumptown, Sir Rolla J of Cush, and others who wish to remain anonymous. Thank you, lords and ladies, for your most generous patronage.
Jive, marry, grifo, grass, hay. Technically, it's cannabis sativa, the common name, marijuana. She has found a crutch to see her through her difficulties instead of facing up to them and coping with them. And in time, she may be ready to try something different, something better.
Gateway theory doesn't work. It's a reality.
All right, time for us to go behind the headlines. We're taking a look at the 5 nanogram per se DUID bill that has just passed unanimously a House committee in Colorado. And, of course, the 5 nanogram per se standard is something that got debated quite a bit in the passage of Washington's I-502, just north of us. And this is a very, very difficult issue. As we look at the science, we find that there's just no reliable way to detect whether someone's too impaired to drive based on one fixed number. It's just not going to work. There's a recent Como News, or was it Cairo? One of the news channels up in Washington State. Now, it wasn't a scientific test by any means, but they had 3 different pot smokers, a frequent pot smoker, an occasional pot smoker, and a rare pot smoker, I guess, infrequent, we could say. All taking these tests, the frequent pot smoker showing up at 3 times that 5 nanogram legal limit. She was at 16 nanograms per milliliter. Drove the driving test just fine. The instructor on scene, the cop on scene, all agreed there was nothing wrong with her driving. There would be no reason whatsoever to pull her over. But if she had been pulled over, if she'd had a broken tail light, if she had a headlight out on, or the license plate illumination light out and gotten pulled over, who knows how that stop could have ended up, and she might have been charged for being impaired when her impairment was nothing. We also look at the various studies, and what a lot of the debate on this, I think, hinges on is the fact that we're trying to determine whether or not someone's impaired behind the wheel based on their body chemistry. And I've been a long time advocate of the idea that the politics behind this are different than the science behind this. The science behind this, as we all know, is completely, well, not completely, but there's a lot of junk to it, right? We've shown that people can have very high tolerances. They can operate a vehicle just fine after the use of marijuana, and especially if they have frequent use of marijuana, if they're a patient or a frequent recreational user, they develop that tolerance. We also see on a bottle of Marinol, the Schedule 3 synthetic THC, a warning that says, until you know how this drug may affect you, do not drive or operate heavy machinery, which implies that once you do know how it does affect you, once you're able to handle your your Marinol high, then you're just fine to drive. It's up to your judgment. So trying to set some sort of number in a scientific manner to determine whether someone is impaired is completely ridiculous. There's just no basis for it. However, I believe the politics behind this have nothing to do with the science behind this. The politics behind this are that people want to ensure that others aren't being irresponsible about their drug use. This is partially why we got the BAC standard for alcohol, is we wanted to make sure that if someone was just out recently pounding a bunch of beers, that we would be able to do something about that, to detect them, to stop them, to punish them for being irresponsible about their use. And while blood alcohol is a different situation scientifically, in that the alcohol content of your blood is a pretty reliable indicator of your impairment, I still think the politics behind that had less to do with the impairment and more to do with the responsibility issue. I think really that's what our opponents, and I shouldn't say opponents, that's what I think the general public is looking for. They're looking for something that says we as the cannabis community are also interested in and concerned about making sure people are being responsible about their marijuana use. That people who are going out to drive aren't getting super baked before they do it and becoming a threat behind the wheel, or even worse, smoking while they're driving and being a threat behind the wheel. So I ask the cannabis community to consider that, politically speaking, we may be past the point where it's possible to fight outright a per se DUID. Just as there's an inevitable tide of legalization that is washing over this country, there may also be an inevitable tide that comes with it, an undertow, if you will, of the per se DUID idea. So perhaps we ought to use some jujitsu on this. Perhaps we ought to use the force of that undertow to our benefit. And that is to start arguing for not an impairment standard, but for a recent use standard. When a person uses cannabis, after inhaling cannabis, there is a spike in that nanograms per milliliter. It spikes up into near 100. And that fades within about 5 minutes. If we were to be arguing for a higher per se nanogram limit, say something in the 30 range or the 50 range, something where we could argue, look, we're all concerned about catching people who've just recently smoked, but this 5 nanogram you're setting is catching people who were asleep for 12 hours who smoked the day before. So it's not serving anyone's purposes. Let's argue for something higher that might be more indicative of someone who recently smoked. Now, that alone would not be enough. But I think if we included with it this rebuttable presumption that someone above this 35 or above this 50 limit or whatever it is presumed to be impaired, however, can provide a defense in court, if they can show in court that they weren't impaired, be able to rebut that, perhaps we've got a winning political argument. Perhaps we've got a way that we can be seen to be compromising without really compromising too much in the effect of protecting those of us who are actually behaving responsibly about this. It's something to consider. And also, I've also mentioned the old smoldering joint rule, like an open container rule, right? No roaches in the ashtray, no used paraphernalia within the driver's section, no accessible marijuana, keep it all in the trunk, keep it locked up, whatever. If we show the community that we are willing to be responsible about this and that we're looking for creative out of the box ways to ensure everybody's safety and responsibility in this new post legalization era, I think we could go a long way. But I think if we continue to fight absolutely no per se DUID, we'll be seen to be obstructionist and we'll be seen to be selfish and reckless in our pursuit of legalization. I don't have all the answers, but it is something to consider and try to separate the science from the politics of this, because I really do believe that's two separate issues. All right, so there's something to chew on. Think about that, and we're going to take a quick little break because it is 20 after here. Brian the Red hanging out, getting ready for Red Eyes Reggae Flashback later tonight. We'll have some Jaw Soldiers coming up after this.
Oh, have you ever met that funny reefer man? A reefer man. Have you ever met that funny reefer man? A reefer man. If he said he swam to China, he would sell you South Carolina. Then you know you're talking to that reefer man.
Yeah, I watch MTV all the time. They have the Rock Against Drug commercials, that whole campaign. These guys have, slid into fucking school buses and killed 20 children, Rather than a facial license, they made a public service announcement. Yeah, no shit. Yeah. I love these guys that is hello, listen, don't get caught with drugs or you'll have to do a commercial just like this one. I think I found the message. The message is don't get caught. Rock Against Drugs. What a fucking name. Somebody was high when they came up with this title. It's like Christians Against Christ. Rock created drugs. What are they talking about? They go together, folks.
Fun.
What's happening, cool cats? This is Big Daddy, and I want you to cruise on over to the Funky Roller Rink. We'll be grooving all night long.
I like it.
Doors open at 11 Eastern, 8 Pacific, every Thursday night.
Funky, delicious.
Everyone knows music and marijuana go together, so let's wind up our 20 after break with the Russ Belville Show's Daily Toker Tunes, the best in pod-safe 420 music from around the web. Today is Irie Wednesday, featuring reggae, ska, and other world music genres. You can get downloads and more information about all our Daily Toker Tunes by visiting music.radicalruss.com. Now, sit back and enjoy your Daily Toker Tune.
All right, welcome to Wednesday, where we get nice and irie. And I tell you, one of the most difficult parts of putting together the Wednesday show is knowing how to spell the damn band names. It's 3 words. It's with a K. It's with a rhythm. I'm just old and square. What can I say? We turn things over to Brian the Red, who's much more hip on the irie tip. Take it away, my man.
I gotcha. Yeah, no, we got. The Irie tune for this week is, of course, once again, the title track for last week's Red Eyes Reggae Flashback. And we got a new Reggae Flashback coming up tonight at 8 p.m. Pacific. It'll be our 20th show.
Ooh,
so, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, good stuff. So, still picking out a couple of tracks for the show, and we'll have some good stuff. And next week, we'll have a little bit of bonus footage from my trip to the Israel Vibrations Roots Radix concert last Saturday, which was awesome.
Very, very nice.
In town at the Hawthorne Theater.
Basically, the first Red Eyes Reggae Flashback, concert appearance.
Yeah, yep. Basically, first 420 radio reggae concert appearance too. So
right on.
Stuff.
Herb's been going out to a lot of these local Portland gigs. That's one of the nice things about where we're living here is a lot of great bands come through, and there's a lot of good mid-sized theaters you can see them in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, most of them sell alcohol, which kind of puts a bummer on the reggae tip. But whatever, we'll keep it irie here. This is Culture Fari with Just Soldier.
Pain and sorrow gone from the lies we tell, sadness and misery from the things we say. Why
be righteous, righteousness will follow you. Strive to show compassion, to your fellow brothers and to your sisters. One day it's gonna be payday, a payday, a judgment day. Well, the Father who sitteth in Mount Zion sees all the works you do, gonna reward you according to the works you do, the things you say, the works you do, the things you say. So the burden is on the shoulders of Jaja soldiers, well, to do what is right in a Jaja sight. The burden is on the shoulders of Jaja soldiers, well, to show them what is right in a Jaja sight. To keep up the pace, not the fight. So I say, boy, why, boy, pain and sorrow come from the lies we tell. Oh yes, a sadness and misery from the things we say. One day it's gonna be hell. One day a judgment day. For the burden is on the shoulders of Jaja soldiers, well, to do what is right in a Jaja sight. The burden is on the shoulders of Jaja soldiers, well, to show them what is right in a Jaja sight. Yes, to keep up the pace, not the fight. Well, strive to tell the truth. Honor will follow you. Strive to be righteous, righteousness will follow you.
And now, another episode of Cannabis Shakespearean Theatre. I'm your host, Leonard Pinthgarnell III. Tonight we take a look at one of the finest works in the cannabis cinema, 1996's Half-Baked, starring David Chappelle, as interpreted by the Royal Shakespearean Cannabis Theatre Company. In this scene, Chappelle's character, Thurgood Marshall, has just admitted his addiction to cannabis to a room full of narcotics addicts. One addict, played in the film by Robert Saget and interpreted here by the Royal Company's Sir Frederick Farrach, takes umbrage at the suggestion.
I find it preposterous the notion that you, sir, may be addicted to cannabis. In times previous, I have undertaken lubricious endeavours, most revolting and unbecoming of a proper gentleman, in my servitude to the wicked powder of the coca leaf. Lo, that is an addiction whose chains would bind Hercules. At any point in history, could one identify a moment in your life so sullied by your ignominy as a cannabis slave? Methinks not! Boo this man!
For Cannabis Shakespearean Theatre, I'm Leonard Pinthgarnell III.
Georgia. Hi, this is Willie Nelson, and I need your help. Alcohol prohibition didn't work in the 20s, and marijuana prohibition isn't working today. It's time we stop arresting law-abiding citizens because they prefer marijuana over alcohol. Nearly 2,000 Americans are arrested every day on marijuana charges. We're unfairly destroying the lives and careers of hundreds of thousands of people each year simply because they smoke marijuana. These are not criminals. They're average citizens like you, good neighbors who work hard, raise families, pay taxes, and contribute to their communities. We need your help to end marijuana prohibition once and for all. It's the fair thing to do.
For more information, contact NORML, the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws. Call toll-free 888-67-NORML or visit their website at norml.org.
Michael Phelps, Olympic superstar, 14 gold medals, world record holder. Bomb smoker. So much for that amotivational syndrome. Since 1974, High Times Magazine has been the chronicle of the cannabis community. The Russ Belville Show visits with West Coast editor Dave Bienenstock for a look forward to the next issue and the next marijuana events in our High Times preview. Yo!
All right, welcome back, everybody. 33 past the hour here, and we're going to bring you video from the High Times Medical Cannabis Cup. It was filmed by our volunteer, Mike Smolka. And remember, we're a radio show, so I'm primarily interested in the audio. Some of this is a little shaky because he's in the crowd trying to get the film. But please check this out. A little bit of Tommy Chong winning the High Times Lifetime Achievement Award at the High Times Medical Cannabis Cup in San Bernardino just a couple of weekends ago.
Video screen. Who is it?
It's me, Dave, man. Open up, I got the stuff.
Who?
It's Dave, man. Open up, I think the cops saw me come in here.
Who is it?
It's Dave, man. Will you open up? I got the stuff with me.
Who?
Dave, man. Open up.
Dave?
Yeah, Dave. Come on, man. Open up. I think the cops saw me.
Dave's not here.
For 50 years, Tommy Chong has been an icon of the entertainment industry. He started out successfully as a musician, releasing hit records and doing sketch comedy in Vancouver. But when he met Richard Cheech Marin, he made comedy history with Cheech and Chong, selling out arenas worldwide and making multiple platinum records with outrageous pot-themed comedy. When Hollywood called, Cheech and Chong answered, hitting it big with one of the biggest comedy hits ever in Up in Smoke, a stoner film classic that endures to this day.
It's locked, man. Oh, let go. Let go, man. Come on in. Hey, what's going on? Man, he's a bust, man. We gotta figure out some way to get you out of here, man.
But at the height of their success, Cheech and Chong went their separate ways. Tommy stayed true to his cannabis roots and cemented his status as a stoner hero. He continued to speak out for cannabis in all its forms, appearing at marijuana events all over the country. He was named High Times Magazine Freedom Fighter of the Year, appearing on the cover of the magazine. In the late 90s, he founded a successful glass smokeware company, Tommy Chong Bongs. However, in 2004, he was busted for selling those bongs and served a year in jail. But after his release from prison, to the delight of the stoner world, Cheech and Chong reunited and now tour regularly. Their act remains as fresh and as funny as it did for 4 decades, and the comedy of Cheech and Chong has been introduced to a brand new audience. Today, Tommy Chong is fighting cancer, but he uses cannabis as part of his treatment, and he relies upon his deep sense of spirituality to see him through. Tommy Chong remains our leader and our legend. Hey everybody, my name is Dan Sky, editorial director. I was lucky enough to shoot 3 covers of Tommy Chong. He has been on the cover 8 times for High Times magazine, and he is an inspiration. Next to Jack Harrer, there is nobody like Tommy Chong, and here he is. You win the Lifetime Achievement Award. Let me get the award for you. Take over.
First of all, I want to thank High Times for this wonderful event that we're having. This is a lot of fun, isn't it? Yeah, it's just like a circus. And we're the performers. That weed is so good here. Woo. Yeah, and I did take cannabis for my cancer, and I got a report that it doesn't really cure it, but it gets the cancer cells so stoned that they forget why they're there. And eventually they just fuck off, so it's cool, man. Yeah. Who would have believed, man, that you get cancer and a plant like pot can just wipe it out? Whew. And the government still thinks it has no medical value whatsoever. It's weird, man. All Obama has to do is reschedule, and we're done. But until he does, we're all going to be outlaws for a while, I guess, huh? Yeah, I had to quit smoking pot, and I think that's why I got cancer. Seriously. When I went to jail, I had to quit for like 3 years, pre-probation, jail time, and then post-jail probation. And I did it 3 years without smoking at all. And, people ask me, how did you do it? I said, well, I had no choice, And that was the greatest thing about pot, that you don't really have to smoke it. It's so kind to you that if you don't want to smoke it, it'll say, okay, I'll be here when you get ready. And so quitting didn't hurt me at all. It was enjoyable because it was fun being straight after all those years. It was like another high. But being straight, man, it's a high. Because you understand what other people are trying to tell you. See, when you're stoned, you don't give a shit. You know what you're thinking, and that's all that counts. Yeah. This weed, man, is going to save the world. It is. They've done studies, man, and one thing about pot, no violence. No violence, man. It makes you peaceful. And they've done studies, man. They found out, that pot really is the answer to gun control. Really. Get those fuckers high, man. Then they forget who they're pissed off at. Life's so simple when you're high, man. Everything makes sense. Total. Even when you're fucked up. Even when you're in some fucked situation that, it's impossible. Like you got caught going through a red light after waiting for the stoplight to change colors. And all of a sudden, the cops are there. And you're in the middle of the intersection and you're fucked up. And the only thing you can do when the cops come over is laugh. because it's so fucking funny what you just did. And then when the cops see that, man, there's no violence. They don't feel violent. I've gotten out of more shit by making cops laugh than I can count, man. And when I was in jail, they treated me like a hero. The police, the guards, yeah. It was great, man. People asked me in jail, asked me there, do you miss Cheech? And I said, no. And they said, why? I said, because I'm here with a lot of Cheeches. Everywhere I look, there's Cheech, man. So I made it through that jail thing. It was nothing, man. It was great. Then I got to come to events like this, man. Who would have thought? Imagine, I went to jail for 9 months for a bomb. Isn't that a stoner's fucking dream? Because when I was in jail, they said, it was weird. They would say, why are you here? And these are hardened criminals. They're in there for murder, they're in for rape, they're in for, horrendous crimes. And they say, what did you do? And I said, I mailed a bomb. Yeah. And they say, wow, fuck, man. What's a bomb? They thought I was saying bombs. And I never got high once in jail. I got offered a lot, but then they drug test me a half hour later. Yeah, they were trying to bust me for smoking pot in jail so they could have a headline, Tommy Chong caught smoking pot in jail. But I had a buddy there that saved my ass, and in fact, he was from San Bernardino. He was an old biker named Steve. He was my dog when I was in jail. And every time anybody offered me a joint, old Steve would tell him, hey, get the fuck out of here. Leave him alone. And then they'd drug test me because they were trying to catch me. And then if they caught me, they would put me in, I would get more time in jail. So the pot is so beautiful, man, because you don't have to smoke it. You only smoke it because you want to smoke it. Isn't that beautiful? Isn't that something to be hooked on? To be addicted to? Something kind and sweet, man. Gift from God.
Yes.
The burning bush.
Yes.
That's what God gave Moses. God appeared to Moses in the form of a burning bush.
Yes, I.
Personally, and he saw Moses standing there, and he said, Mo, come here, boy. He said, this bud's for Jews. And that God dope stayed lit for 40 years, man. And Moses wandered the desert for 40 years, and the people followed him. And they cried out, Moses, Moses, give us a hit, motherfucker. Come on, shotgun, shotgun. 40 years they wandered the desert. What were they looking for? The land of milk and honey. The fuckers had the munchies. Yeah, weed is going to save the world. And our job is to make sure that the world gets saved. So we have to spread the good news, share the weed, and enjoy life, because that's all we got. Thank you.
That's Tommy Chong from the High Times Medical Cannabis Cup in San Bernardino just a couple weeks ago. Taking his...
Just want to read the award to Tommy Chong here for his lifelong devotion to cannabis, comedy, and, boy, I tell you, we both need glasses. Something else, but it's really heartfelt.
So there they are. Des Guy, thanks for doing that presentation as well. When we come back, we'll have time for a radical rant. I'm going to take a look at statements by Dr. Kevin Sabet, a couple other doctors. It's just amazing to me they can't wrap their minds around the idea that plants can be medical. We're going to shatter some stereotypes, break some paradigms when we come back.
We'll be right back after these messages from our 420 friendly sponsors. Support these advertisers because their ad money goes straight to the Russ Belville Show. You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.
NORMAL stands for Responsible Adult Cannabis Use. If cannabis use is causing problems in your life, consider taking a break or seeking medical assistance. Consider ceasing cannabis use if you have a family history of mental illness. Don't drive or operate heavy machinery while impaired by cannabis use. Cannabis use is not without risks, even though the risks are far less.
You want answers? I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore. You want answers?
You have offended my family.
I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth.
And you have offended the Shaolin Temple.
You can't handle the truth.
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Radical Rant.
For today's Radical Rant, I wanted to take a look at the performance of Kevin Sabet at the Ohio State House yesterday. I had mentioned this on a previous week's newscast that he would be there, and I believe somebody from our audience may have even gotten some audio or video of it. We will check back on that. But I got a report from, let's see which website this was. Well, I've written it up on my blog at radicalruss.com. You can get the original links back. But, Kevin Sabet, we call him the architect of the kinder, gentler drug war, the quarterback of what I call the Goldilocks solution, the just right third way to continue punishing marijuana smokers. And he was speaking on behalf of his Project SAM, Smart Approaches to Marijuana. And he explained, let me get this quote for you. He explained that advocates for medical marijuana legalization are, quote, putting on white coats and pretending to have compassion for the sick and dying. Yeah. Yes. It's awful. Pretending. We're pretending to have compassion for the sick and dying. Sabet continued to explain that it was wrong to use, quote, smoked marijuana under the pretense of medicine, end quote, and that existing FDA-approved drugs that contain one active cannabinoid from marijuana, Marinol, should be used instead. Sabet claims that only 5% of patients in medical marijuana states are seeking it for, quote, severe medical problems, end quote, but seem to indicate that even those 5% should cease using medical cannabis and wait instead for an FDA-approved version of the plant that is already providing them relief. Sabet's claims fly in the face of state medical marijuana registry program statistics, like, for example, Oregon, where over 1/3 of patients using medical marijuana are using it for spasticity, like multiple sclerosis, seizures, like epilepsy, HIV/AIDS, and cancer. It's like 34%. Records from Colorado indicate that over 1/5 of patients are using medical marijuana for those same severe medical problems. So anywhere from 20 to 34% of patients are using it for what apparently you consider to be severe medical problems. This is almost a tacit admission that there are people using medical marijuana for severe medical problems, and you, Kevin Sabet, would rather that they stop. That they found something that works for them, and you'd rather that they stop because the plant doesn't fit your little paradigm of having gone through the FDA and having its molecules analyzed and put into very specific doses into pills and sprays and inhalers. Because it doesn't match that paradigm, these people should suffer? Brave Michaela should, be nauseous and not be able to eat from a chemotherapy treatment? Alex Eccles should continue to batter himself bloody? My wife should have to suffer migraines and go to the emergency room? If it's working, it's medicine. And this is the strange thing about medical marijuana that is so threatening to so many of these people in the medical and pharmaceutical industries is not that it's the wacky weed or that it leads to heroin or whatever it might be, or or their big concerns, smoking, we'll get to that in a second, has nothing to do with that. It's that it shatters their paradigm. It's that it flies in the face of pharmaceutically controlled doctors in lab coats, patents and barcodes and all what have you, and massive markups and profits too. I've often likened it to the Protestant Reformation, in that a similar thing here. The Catholic Church had ruled with this idea that the only way to salvation to God was through a priest class. You had to go talk to the priest. They still exist today in their religion. Whereas the Protestant Reformation, big, massive change in paradigm, was that mankind could seek salvation directly through Jesus. Now, I know this is not a religious discussion, but the schism that exists today between Protestant and Catholic is a direct result of that paradigm-shattering idea that you didn't have to go to some intermediary to get your salvation. You could get it yourself. And that's the same level of paradigm shattering we have here with medical marijuana. We don't have to go to the pharmacy, to the doctors in the white coats to dispense to us our magical pill for our salvation. We can get it ourselves through what has been provided to us through however you determine or whatever you think a creator is. Nature, evolution, God, flying spaghetti monster, I don't care. But it's the same kind of idea, and that's what's so threatening to them, is it shatters this paradigm, this whole class of people that are so in need. And again, I got nothing against doctors and modern medicine and surgical techniques and pharmaceutical miracles. They're fantastic. They save a lot of lives. But they're not the only options out there, and the people like Kevin Sabet want to keep them the only options. They want to keep this pharmaceutical FDA paradigm, this same FDA that approved Vioxx as safe for human use, that approved Fen-Phen as safe for human use. And as a matter of fact, right now on the FDA drug recall sheet, there are 5 different recalls of drugs already for 2013 that had been approved as safe by the FDA. Looking back through 2012, it's 4 screens worth of recalls. So why should we be concerned about this plant that has been used for 5,000 years, has no possible way of dealing a fatal overdose, and has far less side effects than half of the drugs I hear advertised on my evening television for things like waking up in the middle of the night? Oh, do you wake up in the middle of the night? Take this pill. Might lead to aggression and fatal episodes. I love that one. Fatal episodes. As if that could be plural. Anyway, let me get back to a couple of these other doctors that are just stuck in this paradigm. This was from the Gainesville Sun, I believe is the newspaper. I could be wrong on that. Gainesville, Florida. University of Florida expert Dr. Gary Reisfeld argues that medical marijuana really isn't medicine. Now, University of Florida, that's where Kevin Sabet is a professor as well. So these guys probably talk in the lunchroom, I suppose. Dr. Gary Reisfeld, the chief of pain medicine, something for which we have more documentation of marijuana's effectiveness than almost any other condition, mind you. And the University of Florida's Department of Psychiatry has weighed in on the debate with an article on the latest issue in the New England Journal of Medicine in which he argues that marijuana should not be used in medical practice. Quote, "It's not really the way physicians think. It's not medical and it's not medicine." End quote. How much more confirmation do we need that it has to do with how physicians think, has to do with their paradigm? Reisfeld's article was based on a case study of a female patient with advanced breast cancer. He says, quote, "Many people would say, have compassion, let her smoke," Reisfeld said. "The bigger question is, as a society, what do we think about the use of smoked marijuana?" What do we think about it? What's the reaction? What's the analysis? What's the cultural impact of it? Not whether it allows her to eat, not whether it stops pain, not whether with our own damn eyes we can see that it's having a medical effect. It's what we think about it. Could this be more clear as to why we are locked in this battle over medical marijuana? This Reisfeld continues by saying, quote, "We don't really have any examples of smoked medicine. If we have patients with pain, we don't recommend that they go out and smoke opium," end quote. Okay, let me get to this smoke thing. Number one, if we were in a emergency battlefield situation and happened to come upon some poppy plants, and we were in some traumatic pain, and we could score some of those plants with a razor and get some sap out of it and use that to treat the pain, we would. We certainly would. Plants can be medical. The reason we don't ask anyone to smoke opium or anything like that is we have pretty much, synthesized the opioid plants to a great deal, and they're pretty accessible. They're actually legally prescribable. That's part of the reason. But the other thing I want to get up is, good God, why do you people always get so stuck on the smoking? What is this, 1994? Have you not heard of a vaporizer? Have you not seen a marijuana brownie? Does the concept of tinctures just escape you? There are so many preparations now and so much advanced technology now being created. My wife now has this cute little cloud vape pen that uses concentrated cannabis oils in a little handheld rechargeable vaporizer. No smoke at all. Vapor. And as far as medicines being smoked, well, no, we don't burn a lot of medicines, but we inhale a lot of medicines. Ask any asthmatic with one of those, albuterol inhalers, right? We have all sorts of inhaled medicines out there. Inhaling medicines for these asthmatics, one of the reasons why they use it is because of its self-titrating ability and instant activity. They don't have to, die while they're choking and can't breathe. They can get an actual instant relief from it, same as we get from even smoked marijuana. But they just cannot reconcile the idea that a medicine could be in a plant and that it could be burned or smoked or inhaled. And finally, let me conclude with a Dr. Spencer, who I ended up doing some time tweeting back and forth with, little Twitter war that I get into from time to time. You can follow me on Radical Russ, at Radical Russ, if you're into those kind of things. But this Dr. Spencer, is an acolyte here of Kevin Sabet, following Kevin Sabet quite a bit. And she just had to say, let me see if I can find the original quote here. Here it is. In her tweet, there is no medical cannabis plant grown in a backyard. Medically approved, goes through FDA approval, #Sativex. Hey, I'm all for, develop Sativex, great. Go ahead. More options, the better. But why can't there be a medical plant? Why can't a plant have a medical benefit? Medical isn't that it went to school and graduated from pharmaceutical college. Medical is that it has an effect that heals us. That is medical. If I go out into the woods and I've got myself a terrible sunburn and I happen upon an aloe vera plant and I break a frond off and squeeze some of that juice and rub it on my sunburn and I feel better and the sunburn feels better and it alleviates the pain, is that not medical? If there's so many plants out there that can be used for medical benefit. The Chinese knew it. The Native Americans use it. Every culture has had medicinal plants. This idea of pharmaceuticalized, cut and dried, precise dose medicine is a relatively new invention in human history. And I'm, again, not decrying the use of modern medicine, but these two things can coexist. And, if anything, marijuana should be the medicine of first resort, given its low side effects and given so many things that it helps to treat. That's all the time we got for Hour 1. Join us on Hour 2, Toker Talk Radio. We'll take your calls at 971-533-7111. We'll have more video from High Times Medical Cannabis Cup and maybe some surprises. For Brian the Red, I'm Radical Russ. Thanks for joining us. Until next time, take care of each other, tokers.
This is the Russ Belville Show. The Russ Belville Show is blogging and podcasting daily at radicalruss.com.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you